Jasmine Gunn offended the brother-in-law of the police station chief, Vincent Fan, and was detained by the police station. 10 days later, Jasmine received an urn. The leader said that during his detention at the police station, he died suddenly of a heart attack. Considering his family's financial situation, they cremated him for free. Struck by a sudden disaster that left her family broken and her husband dead, Jasmine looked at her mother-in-law, who had turned gray overnight, and her 4-year-old son, who was too young to understand, and after crying, she laughed. They didn't know that Jasmine was once a top student in the chemistry department of Zhejiang University. She wanted to let them know that the title of chemical queen she once held was never in vain. On a cement platform stood a giant marble globe engraved with 2 characters law. Behind this solemn sculpture was a towering building with 6 gilded characters hanging on the roof, Jean County People's Court. Xander Su, the head of the complaint department of the county prosecutor's office, walked out of the building, feeling somewhat restless today. As he reached the court's exterior, before he could regain his composure, several men rushed up to him and knocked him to the ground. The security guards and bailiffs at the door immediately reacted, rushing over and subduing the assailants. Colleagues and judges still inside the building saw this and immediately ran down to help Xander Su up. A crowd of onlookers gathered around. Xander Su stood up, a bruise forming around his eye and a slight swelling on his forehead, streaked with blood. The 3 assailants held down by the bailiffs were all in their 50s or 60s. Behind them, 2 women of similar age sat on the ground, crying to the onlookers, "Beasts. My son was stabbed to death, and no one cares about the murderer. They even let him go. There's no justice." Xander Su glanced up inadvertently and saw the word law engraved on the distant statue, feeling a wave of guilt. A subordinate whispered in his ear, "Boss, shall I call the police station to have them arrested? You're bleeding from your head. Let me take you to the hospital." Xander Su shook his head. "Tell our friends at the court to let them go." Let them go? He was puzzled. Yes, let it end here. But what if they come to cause trouble again? We'll deal with that when it happens. I have my own judgment. Tell them to let the people go. I'm leaving first. Xander Su nodded to the court personnel as a gesture of farewell, then got into his car and left without looking back. Here's what happened. The son of the town mayor of Jean County, a well-known local thug, stabbed a young man in his 20s to death over a dispute. The facts of the case were clear, and the responsibility was definite. By all accounts, the murderer should have been sentenced to at least 15 years. But his father had significant influence and sought leniency by pulling strings with higher-ups. Even with leniency, 7 or 8 years seemed inevitable, but someone came up with a way to have a psychiatric evaluation done for his son. The results showed the young man suffered from severe paranoid schizophrenia, prone to extreme actions when emotionally agitated, and was in such a state when the crime occurred. Thus, several departments sat down and decided to handle it this way. The prosecutor's office would not charge him with intentional homicide but with intentional injury. The police would issue a psychiatric evaluation, proving the murderer was in a state of mental illness at the time of the crime. The court, considering the murderer's family's willingness to compensate the victim's family generously and according to the laws regarding crimes committed by the mentally ill, would issue a verdict for compulsory treatment. Of course, the murderer's family would have to make a substantial civil compensation. But the victim's family did not accept a verdict that allowed the murderer to go free in exchange for money, so no sentence was announced in court today, planning for a post-trial mediation before deciding on a sentencing date. This led to the scene that just unfolded. However, Xander Su knew that many people would soon visit the victim's family to persuade them. In a few days, the family would realize that bringing the dead back to life was impossible, and imprisoning the murderer would not benefit them. Moreover, the murderer's family would trouble them, and they couldn't afford to offend the mayor's network. It would be better to accept a large compensation and move on. Having dealt with many such cases, Xander Su often felt remorse. After all, he was human, a person with ordinary sensibilities. Which normal person, aside from those whose politics are always correct, would want to be born evil? But that's how the world is. He had no choice. Society is inherently unjust, filled with unfairness. The Bible says that God lets the sun shine on both the good and the evil, the righteous and the unrighteous. If even God doesn't intervene in the injustices of the world, what could Xander Sue do? He could only go with the flow. Given a choice, he too would want to be a good person. What truly troubled Xander Sue today was not this case, but something he heard during a chat with the police in the morning. Jasmine Gaughan's family had suffered a great misfortune. He wasn't very close to Jasmine, so it wasn't really his place to get involved. However, he knew that once Jasmine was in trouble, his old friend now in the United States would become agitated. Once agitated, there was no telling what he might do. He understood his old friend's character well, but could never fully grasp it. After hanging up the phone, Jasmine Gaughan was stiff and motionless. Seconds later, her tears fell like a dam had broken. Her 4-year-old son, playing nearby, was scared by this scene he had never witnessed before and ran over, crying and hugging his mother. "Mommy, Mommy, why are you crying?" Jasmine wanted to reach out and touch her son's head but found her hand too heavy to lift. Her mother-in-law had gone out to buy groceries. What would happen when she returned and heard the news? More than 10 days ago, Vincent Fan's brother-in-law, Zhang Hongba, the most powerful real estate developer in the county, wanted to expand his territory and buy the small factory owned by Jasmine's husband. He refused to sell, leading to a dispute. Zhang Hongba brought people to beat up Jasmine's husband, and both parties were taken away by the police station. Zhang Hongba, being the police chief's wife's brother, was practically at home in the police station, but Jasmine's husband was kept in detention. Jasmine's family tried to seek help, but the police station refused to release him. She had just received a call from the district director saying that Jasmine's husband had suddenly died of a heart attack at the police station. The town considered the family's financial situation and advanced the funds for his cremation, with the urn to be delivered that afternoon. The town was also willing to offer some compensation for their unfortunate loss, hoping they could sit down and discuss the details once they had calmed down. In an instant, her family was destroyed, and the shocking turn of events left Jasmine, a naturally gentle woman, collapsed on the ground. What about tomorrow? Was there even a tomorrow? She was utterly clueless about everything. Soon, her mother-in-law returned, and both women fainted from crying. In the afternoon, a police car arrived at their door, followed by a regular car. A few local police officers got out of the front car, followed by several small leaders from the street office. After some discussion, they handed the urn to a 50-something auxiliary police officer, telling him, "It's better if you deliver it. You're a distant cousin of their family, somewhat a relative. Try to persuade them to sign the agreement and accept the compensation money early so they don't cause any trouble." The auxiliary police officer reluctantly agreed, holding the urn and bracing himself as he entered. Walking into the yard and reaching the front of the house, the auxiliary police officer knocked on the door, found it unlocked, and hesitantly pushed it open. He was met with a pair of cold eyes. In the room, only Jasmine Gaughan sat, her eyes red but her tears completely dried. The auxiliary police officer carefully placed the urn on the table and cautiously asked, "Where is Jianxing's mom?" "She's passed out." Then please accept my condolences." "I will," Jasmine Gaughan replied coldly. The auxiliary police officer touched his forehead, feeling a chill down his spine, not knowing how to start. Jasmine Gaughan said, "Please have a seat. After all, you are Jianxing's cousin. Let me pour you a cup of tea." This is not necessary." He felt it strange. Why would she offer him tea? Did she really have such a good attitude? Before he could react, a sharply honed kitchen knife was already placed against his neck. "Ah." The auxiliary police officer was terrified, clearly not expecting a frail woman to turn around and pull a kitchen knife on him. At this moment, everyone else was outside, unaware of what was happening inside. If she became angry out of embarrassment, even a cornered rabbit will bite. Who could guarantee that the knife wouldn't slash over? He begged for mercy in a hurry. Don't be rash. Jasmine Gone coldly asked, how did Jianxing really die? Die? From a heart attack. You're still lying, you are Jianxing's cousin. Jasmine Gone's knife pressed in a bit more. The auxiliary police officer felt blood trickling from his neck, knowing that a little more force would sever his artery, and not even a god could save him. In desperation, he had no choice but to beg, I'll tell. He was beaten to death. By whom? People from the police station. Who exactly? It was Deputy Chief River who led the beating. What about your chief? It was the chief who ordered him to do it. You are his cousin, how could you just watch him get beaten to death? It's not my business, I'm just an auxiliary officer, a temp worker, I couldn't say anything, I didn't know, I found out later. Why did they beat Jianxing to death? They initially wanted to teach him a lesson. Jianxing said his finger was broken, and River found him annoying. His finger was broken. How did it break? It was River who broke it. Bang! It was as if someone had struck a large gong in her mind, causing her entire head to buzz, and the kitchen knife in her hand loosened. A living person, they actually broke his fingers and then beat him to death. She had no time to think further, letting the bitter tears flow into her heart, and quickly steadied the knife again, saying, continue. The auxiliary police officer, panicked, complied. Jianxing's finger was broken, and he was in so much pain that he kept shouting and cursing. River found him annoying and continued to beat him, and then that was it. Bang! The kitchen knife fell to the ground, and Jasmine Gone stepped back 2 steps and sat down dejectedly. The auxiliary police officer, feeling relieved, escaped to one side and cautiously comforted, Niece, don't be like this, you can't let your mom know about this, she's old, what if she can't handle it? I know, I'll keep it a secret, and I won't let anyone know it was you who told me. Jasmine Gone's reaction was completely unexpected to him. He had been worried about revealing the police station's secrets, although it was out of desperation. He was not a clever person, and he had no time to concoct a lie just now. But if it got out, he was sure to lose his job, and offending River could bring a whole lot of trouble. Now that she suddenly became so calm, the auxiliary police officer felt half of his worries disappear, and he quickly struck while the iron was hot. I still have to advise you as an old cousin, what's done is done, you shouldn't make a fuss anymore. If not for yourself, think about Jianxing's mom and your kids. Try to persuade Jianxing's mom to sit down and talk sooner. The dead cannot be brought back to life, the most important thing is to ask for more money. With this incident, as long as you agree to let it go, the town will definitely be willing to pay more. No one wants this to happen. Jasmine Gone was silent for a long while before finally nodding forcefully, thank you, cousin. I understand, I'll persuade my mother-in-law, don't worry. We still have a child, we can't let the child suffer because of the adult's affairs. What else can we 2 women do? The auxiliary police officer breathed a sigh of relief, repeatedly saying, that's good, that's good. Jasmine Gone coldly said, tell those people outside, if the compensation isn't enough, we won't talk. We can live without it. The auxiliary police officer hurriedly said, that won't happen, the amount of money can be discussed slowly, as long as you have this attitude. So, when do you think we can sit down and talk? Jasmine Gone snorted coldly, after such an incident, we should at least take care of the funeral first, right? We need at least 10 days to half a month. During this period, don't bother our family, I also need to work on my mother-in-law. All right then, you're a college graduate, you can understand things more clearly. In that case, I'll leave first, not to disturb you? No need to see me out. The auxiliary police officer walked out nervously, taking a deep breath. Jianxing's wife is a college graduate, indeed sensible, knowing how to weigh the pros and cons. If it were a shrew, the work would have been difficult. Next, they would find a few more relatives and friends to take turns visiting their home to work on them mentally, believing that the agreement could be signed soon. What he didn't know was that at this moment, Jasmine Gan had made a difficult decision. The phone kept ringing, and Xander Su looked at the name on the screen, hesitated for a long time, and finally answered. A calm male voice came from the other end. How is Jasmine Gan? You haven't called me for a long time. How are you? Is work going well? The man didn't answer, just repeated, How is Jasmine Gan? Xander Su sighed. All right, how did you know? With such a big incident, I saw other classmates discussing it online. Oh. Xander Su replied meaningfully, quickly thinking about how to respond, and had to say, Why don't you ask me why I didn't tell you about this? Of course, you were afraid I'd worry, so you didn't say. Anyway, how is Jasmine Gan? Here we go again. Xander Su felt helpless. You'll find out sooner or later. Yes, something happened to Jasmine Gan's family. How did her husband, Jianxing, die? From a heart attack. What a coincidence, just happened to have a heart attack in the police station. You know he was in the police station? Yes. Xander Su pursed his lips. Even though he wasn't facing the person on the other end of the phone, his face still showed a look of helplessness. He didn't know how to describe the whole incident in the most powerless terms. He was a mid-level leader in his unit and also a person with a face in the county, but he had no way to deal with this friend. Why aren't you speaking? Are you thinking about how to lie to me? The man asked. Impossible, Xander Su firmly denied. Would I lie to you? Could I deceive you, a genius with an IQ of 160? All right, then tell me, how did Jianxing die? Xander Su hesitated for a moment, then said, he offended a big boss in the town, there was a dispute between them, it was brought to the police station, and after being detained for more than a week, he had a heart attack and died.